Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Best Care Anywhere podcast. I am your host, Anthony, currently recording late into the evening so I can be just as sleep deprived as Hawkeye. And joining me, as always, is the little man in a pink cashmere sweater and golf cap that controls my adrenal glands, Ethan Wilson.
If you don't like the quality of the work I'm doing, why'd you give me the position?
Exactly. Ethan, how are you? It feels like it's been so long since we've discussed MASH.
Well, in the grand scheme of things, it kind of has, because I had to push our schedules around to go on my stupid little trip, and so I think it's been 3 weeks since we
Been 3
recorded?
weeks.
Yeah,
3 long, arduous, exhausting weeks.
mashless weeks. I almost cried.
I didn't say they were mashless.
I said they were mashless.
No, they absolutely were mashless because completely uninteresting topic for most of our podcast audience. My primary source of entertainment the week you were gone was one of the live streamers on Twitch that we watch did a nonstop stream for almost a week straight, and that was very entertaining. So yeah, not much other entertainment was happening, but it was not entirely mashless.
Yes.
But anyway, so how was
deprivation?
Oh yeah, how was Sturgis?
Well, Sturgis is Sturgis. It was good. I had a lot more fun this year than I did last year, but it's like I said, oh my God, this time last year, I doubt I will go again. My friends suckered me into it this year. Maybe they will again next year, but that remains to be foreseen.
Yeah, you don't have to divulge any of the stories that you shared with me, but just from both times of you coming back, it's like, it seems like a lot of effort to not get accidentally the shit kicked out of you.
Yeah.
Like, there's too many drunk people, there's too many fragile male egos, there's too many ballsy dudes looking for, it's like, that's too much effort. That's too much effort for me.
I think I've talked to a few people while I was there that were there in like the 70s and the 60s, back, when the city was still trying to shut them down instead of using it as a cash cow. And I mean, it wasn't all that long ago that there was one vendor, and it was the motorcycle club that started the whole thing. And that was the only, now up and down, it's, anti-Biden, pro-Trump stickers, all just, and not that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, but it's just an awful lot of politics for my taste, and an awful lot of consumerism being shoved down your throat. It's less
about the bikes and more about the how angry can we be and how much money can we get you to spend.
Yeah, exactly. Like, guys, it stopped being a counterculture at least 3 decades ago. I don't know what you're trying to do anymore. You're not impressing anyone. Anyway, I should not get started on this tangent because I feel like every week I alienate a different potential demographic of our audience.
I feel like we need to. We've discussed, and a little hint for later because we're going to talk about it very secretively. We've discussed doing the occasional episode about another movie. What's the movie that you referenced with Jack Nicholson a while back?
Easy Rider.
We might have to let you have an Easy Rider rant about the motorcycle counterculture and why it sucks now.
I would do unholy things to make that episode a reality.
Oh Lord.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, welcome back.
Well, thank
Kansas.
you. Thank you. Speaking of traveling, though, we were talking a little bit about it before, but as of the date we're recording, it's National Geocache Day.
It is. I went looking for Tupperware in the forest today. It was a lot of fun.
For all you Mashiacs out there, our host Anthony actually has a mobile geocache on his truck. So, if you ever feel like doxing
whoa. Calm down.
Aw, come on. That would be so fun.
No, that is not an incorrect fact. I do have a trackable code as a decal on my trucks, and it can visit geocaches. It is not in and of itself a geocache, but you can discover it. No, I will not be giving you the code. And for those of you panicking, you're like, oh my God, you could be found. The government's tracking you. 1, they're already doing that. 2, it's a decal that you have to punch a code in on a website to say that you saw it. It doesn't give you my live location. I'm not that stupid.
Yeah,
I'm stupid, but I'm not dumb.
Yeah, there you go. I defy any of our listeners to be able to tell me with extreme confidence that they are not being tracked, considering the only way they know how to reach us is on the internet.
Enough about non-mash things. Were there any other non-mash things? I don't think so.
I
Nothing
don't
of
think
note.
so.
Technically, there's a hurricane in California, but there's not. It's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
They keep calling it like Hurricane Hillary. It's like it stopped being a hurricane like 12 hours before it actually hit California. Now it's just a shitty tropical storm. But whatever. California is still on fire though, so be aware.
Yay!
On that note, so fun fact, California is on fire, being hit by a hurricane/tropical storm, and while the tropical storm was making landfall, there was an earthquake alert in LA County.
No shit.
We're living in a fucking disaster movie.
Talk about the LA County blues. Like, my God.
Oh, God. Once again, as Ethan has said, the Southwest is evidence of man's hubris.
Yes.
But
well,
anyway.
Yeah.
MASH.
But I digest. Yes.
Season 2, Episode 5, Dr. Pierce and Mr. Hyde, very clearly taking its name from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, which I like it. It's snappy. Directed by Jackie Cooper, who, once again, he's directed 4 out of the 5 episodes we've watched so far this season.
This was a Jackie Cooper episode?
Yes, it was.
I'm very surprised to hear that, actually.
Well, it's not Jackie Cooper, because the next thing I'm going to say is going to explain, and I say this with all the love and affection, the next thing I'm about to say is going to explain why this episode feels the way it does.
Okay.
Written by Alan Alda.
Say no more.
And Robert Klane. This is the second episode Alan Alda has had a hand in writing, the previous being the Long John Flap. So once you know that information, a lot more things make sense suddenly, I think. Yeah, so Alan Alda, this is the second MASH written. Robert Klane, this is his 5th of 6 MASHes he will write. Some of his previous ones are Requiem for a Lightweight, Cowboy, Ceasefire, and Showtime. So knowing that now, I think that makes a little more sense why the episode feels the way it does. You have the 2 people that wrote Requiem for a Lightweight and Cowboy, and Long John Flap working together. So
yeah,
does that make more sense to you now? Why the vibe is the way it is?
We'll discuss that at greater length later.
No. So yeah, episode opens up. OR is looking a shambles. It is looking well worked over. Trapper is saying we got to get this, cleaned up because again, wounded can arrive literally at any time. Hawkeye is standing at his empty operating table demanding another patient, and Trapper has to walk him out of the OR saying, "You're done. No more coming. We're good." We then move outside where everyone's relaxing after what was very clearly a long OR session. But don't worry, they have entertainment to look forward to because at 1300 hours, Henry Blake will be giving a lecture on the dangers of acne in combat. So there you go. What could possibly be the dangers of acne in combat?
I can't even think of a half-baked joke or a witty remark. I don't know.
The only legitimate one I could think of is acne can become an open wound and open wounds can become infected. That's about it. I don't know. Audience, your input is more than welcome on this question.
Not that any of our audience has acne.
Oh no. Hawkeye and Trapper are walking across the compound, discussing the previous OR session. Evident by what Hawkeye says, it seems to have been at least 2 to 3 days of nonstop work. So I tried to keep tabs on time, and it's kind of hard because there's not really a set how many days they've been on and off. But I'd say at the start of the episode, we're at minimum 2 days no sleep for Hawkeye. Do you think that's a good estimate so far?
Yeah, absolutely. From the asides and remarks and the way he's acting, that sounds about right to me.
So
Oh,
he gets
actually,
back-
wait. I just got to the scene where trappers yell at him, "You just been carving for 20 straight hours." So,
Okay, so he is. I'll give him 24 hours no sleep, assuming that he wasn't woken up to do surgery.
right.
So he's at day 1 no sleep, which I think we've all done. I've done 24 hours, easy peasy.
Absolutely.
Hawkeye and Trapper get to the swamp. They start disrobing. Well, Trapper does. Hawkeye just flops into his bed. Props to the makeup department and Alan Alda, because throughout this whole episode, he's looking rough.
Yeah.
So
I was
but
kind
yes, you were
of
saying.
thinking it might be character acting, and he just literally stayed up for a week straight. No, I'm curious if the way they get their cots angled at that 45 degree is just Hollywood magic, or if there is an army cot
I think it's-
available that would do that, because that would
I'm
be
pretty
so
sure
awesome.
it's just a 2x4 or a 4x4.
Do you know how fucking expensive lumber is right now?
Yes, but this is 1950s Korea. They probably just like found one.
I'm
don't
not
know.
asking for the sake of the show. I'm asking because it's dope as hell and I want one.
Just find an old railroad tie.
Oh, that's a good point.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And if you really want to get really fancy, make sure there's no nails in it and plane down both, 2 parallel sides so it's nice and flush.
Well,
anyway.
I don't want to get that fancy because the biggest draw of having a railroad tie in my bedroom is the smell of that sweet, sweet creosote.
Oh, God. Fun. Safety tip of the day, please do not burn railroad ties. You will die. So yeah, Hawkeye flops into bed, and no sooner does he do this than choppers approach the camp yet again. Trapper, seeing reason, but he's the first of many people to see reason in this fabulous episode, tells Hawk, stop, go to bed, we can cover for you, you're fine, we got it, we got it handled. Hawkeye, however, is not listening and decides to follow Trapper out to assess the wounded. We get this nice little aside of Hawkeye and not Hawkeye and Henry, Radar and Henry discussing logistics for the next surgery session, stating that should we get rid of the 1941 frozen surplus chicken wings? And Henry replies with, no, because they're better than the 1939 hamburger patties, if I'm remembering correctly. Which
I'm just focused on that poor extra at the explainer scene that eats absolute shit in the mud.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those times to go, is that scripted, or was that scripted, or did he just eat shit randomly? But anyway. So we get Henry joins in with Trapper on Hawkeye, go to bed. You've been up long enough. You're exhausted. So this raises the question: is Hawkeye was there an opportunity for Hawkeye to take a break and he chose not to? Because Henry seems fine. Frank mentions later he gets sleep. Margaret seems fine. The nurses are in shifts. Trapper seems okay. So is Hawkeye just falling on the sword just because, or what? Because I don't get it.
As I see it, the way I view this episode is, I don't want to call it Hawkeye's ego because he is doing a good thing, but he's refusing to lay back. He sees that kid on the back of the Jeep with the chest wound, and he just will not let it go. He's like a dog with a bone.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's so much to unpack, and don't worry, we will at the end of the episode. But so Hawkeye goes into surgery with everyone else. He's seems to be performing fine, but to be fair, Margaret, I'm gonna do the thing.
Do the thing.
That we very rarely do.
Do the thing.
I agree with Margaret and Frank.
How dare you?
Hawkeye may be performing fine, but that doesn't mean he's not. It's the same argument people make for driving while sleep deprived or drunk. Yeah, I'm fine. Okay, you might be until you aren't.
Yeah.
You might feel
line.
fine right up until you hit the brick wall. Like,
Yeah. That line just becomes so razor thin that and once you start treading it.
And as someone who has lost a mirror on the side of their car to just driving sleep deprived, yeah, not worth it. 100% not worth it. 100% should have slept in my car in the Denny's parking lot as opposed to trying to drive back to camp.
I've slept in my
Genuinely.
car in a Denny's parking lot. The police or the servers will come knock on your fucking window, and I hate them for it.
Yeah, but with good reason. Most of the stories I've heard of people pulling into rest stops and sleeping in their car, if you just tell a cop, look, it was either this or drive tired, what would you have preferred I done? Most of them are going to be like, yeah, you should have pulled over and got. Because that's the thing. They always say you should pull over and get some sleep, but then when you pull over and get some sleep, people bug you for sleeping in your car, in front of a Wendy's or a Denny's or whatever. It's like,
it's funny, as you're gonna find out in the very near future. There's this whole probably 50-60 mile stretch on Interstate 80 in Utah where you can't go more than a mile with signs on the side of the road saying, "Tired, pull over." Just sleep on the side of the road. Do it. Don't drive tired.
Because I guarantee you, fun fact, audience, eventually I will be driving out to visit Ethan in Kansas.
Whoop.
Not against my will, but maybe against my better judgment. And there is that section between I can't remember which town's which. Is it Elko or Winnemucca? Which one's more easterly?
Winnemucca is more easterly.
Winnemucca is the eastern. I say Winnemucca, there's also Windover. But basically between Winnemucca, Nevada / Windover, Nevada, till Salt Lake City, there is nothing. There is one straight section of highway and the Bonneville Salt Flats. That's it. Yep. And I guarantee you they had to put those signs up because I bet you people got to Winnemucca or Windover and went, it's only what is it from from the state line to Salt Lake, Nevada state line to Salt Lake, like 100 miles?
Yeah, probably just a hair over.
And they're like, I can do 100. That's only an hour and a half of driving. I can do it. And then they get halfway through and they're like, I'm about to pass out because there's nothing to draw your attention on that road. Yeah, we'll discuss.
Yes,
we'll discuss our sleep deprivation records here coming up. But yeah, Margaret and Frank have a good point. Hawkeye might be performing fine until he isn't. Who knows what he might be missing? Who knows what he might be doing slightly wrong that's going to cause a problem later? We've seen Hawkeye miss a piece of shrapnel when he was performing well rested. He should not be operating. I know Hawkeye's our protagonist. I know we stan Hawkeye. He is sleep deprived, and Mark is right. He is probably performing below par. And even if he isn't, he should not be operating in as tired as he is. There's a reason truckers, airline pilots, a whole bunch of professions have on-call times. And then when that time is done, they're done. You can't. That's a lot of the reason flights get canceled or delayed is because a plane got delayed for weather, and then the crew that was supposed to fly the next leg of that journey, they've hit their clock. They've hit I think it's 12 hours you can be flying, or not 12, like 8 hours or something like that. You can't, because they're like, yeah, you might be okay, but you might not. So yeah, that's why these exist. So I'm on Frank and Margaret's side. Hawkeye should not be operating if he's that tired. But Henry kind of stalls for Hawkeye, stalls for time. And we see even Henry agrees to an extent, because after the end of that surgery session, he orders Hawkeye, you're off both shifts. I don't want to see you operating for another 48 hours. So I think at this point, he's easily hit 36. Because we don't know how long that surgery session is, but we can assume if they just did 20 hours of surgery before then and then immediately went back into surgery, at least 36 hours now without sleep, I would say.
Yeah, that seems fair.
They're kind of loose with the amount of time that goes on. Like, again, it's daytime every time. We only see one night scene, so for all we know, only a day and a half has passed. But I think we can assume surgery scenes are more than the 3 minutes they show us. So, Radar is pushing Hawkeye around in the wheelchair. He is, as Hawkeye is to be, distracted by a herd of nurse, and he starts hark, a herd of nurse, or is that a gaggle? And then he just starts talking nonsense, which, okay. You'll also notice the stereotypical, we're in the background, so look like we're building something.
You know, I love these episodes when they're on the real set, the outdoor set in Malibu Creek. Is it Malibu Creek?
Malibu Creek State Park. Yep.
Yeah. It just, you can tell. I mean, the normal indoor boom set is fine, of course, but I don't know. It fills me with joy to see them in the natural light.
Mm-hmm. So Radar gets Hawkeye back to his tent. He starts laying out Hawkeye's bed, and Radar does the Radar thing. He hears choppers coming, and he props to Radar. He gets between Hawkeye and the door and says, Hawkeye, go to bed. Sleep. Somebody else can operate. And I know we've discussed this before on the show. We only ever see 4 surgeons. We only ever see Hawkeye, Trapper, and Frank, and Henry. In real life, there would be at least 1 or 2 or 3 more shifts of surgeons. Hawkeye does not, in reality, have to be operating every single time wounded come in. But he is actively choosing to ignore orders and common sense to go operate anyway. And he gives Radar this explanation of, my adrenal glands, tiny man in sweater. Yes, I am superhuman. And
yes.
This is where we're getting to the point of, like, Hawkeye, you are being irresponsible. At least in my opinion. But anyway. So I will pose the question to you. What is your record for time without sleep? I say it now. I say record like it's some sort of goal to achieve. No, it is not. It's not a goal. Please do not try to beat any of the numbers we're about to say. But
I'm gonna say probably
now,
50.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna caveat this with, I think it's too hard to say how long have you gone without sleeping. Period. How long have you gone without restful REM sleep? So like, for example, my record's probably close to 48 to 50 hours too, but that's probably with, like, for example, at camp, 48 to 50 hours, but I was able to doze off for 20 minutes during lunch. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, mine's about 48 hours. Would yours still be about 50 hours, given that caveat?
Given that caveat, I'd probably be pushing the 2.5, 3 day mark.
Fun fact, 72 hours without restful sleep is considered mentally impaired by whatever governing body decides that. Like, you are actually mentally, I don't know what the word they use, but you are considered impaired. I say mentally impaired, not like how drinking and driving you're impaired. Like, you are actually functionally mentally handicapped if you go longer than 72 hours without sleep.
Well, here's the thing you're not thinking of. I'm already batshit Looney Tunes crazy normally. It's like PEMDAS, so it cancels each other out. I'm actually more normal when I'm sleep deprived at that level.
So this is the thing I wanted to bring up. I'm assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, did both of our sleep deprivation records occur within the same rough geographical location?
Believe it or not, no.
Oh no! Where did yours occur then?
I was doing back when I was working concrete, fresh out of high school. I was doing, that decorative concrete job. So, we'd pour it and all that, but we'd also do the epoxy systems on top to make it look all pretty. Once in a blue moon, we would get a prevailing wage job down in the Bay Area, and that fucking thing was nuts. It was an extension wing on a museum. and so we were doing just all kinds of decorative epoxy systems. It was actually really beautiful. I wish I took a photo. It was supposed to mimic marble. But
Hmm.
when you're making that kind of buku bucks, you're kind of going all for it. So I was, we were all, me and the team were all going, and then I think I snuck away for a couple of half-hour cat naps, but that would be my 2.5
Yeah,
day
and
mark
and a
record.
and a 20 to 30 minute nap is a godsend, and it does make you feel better. But the effectiveness of the 20 to 30 minute power nap is greatly reduced with every additional hour of not actually getting sleep you have.
The 48 hours straight, yes, was when we were in close geographic proximity, though.
Yeah. No one. I don't think anyone is confused. It's camp. It's summer camp. It's Boy Scout summer camp. Uh, I think it's hard to say because for camp, 2 hours of sleep at night is within the acceptable range of no, you were able to get to sleep last night. Whereas in normal civilian life, I would say, no, you didn't. You slept, but you did not sleep. You know what I mean? But
Yes.
for camp, 2 hours is like it's still not good, but it's better than depending on what the situation is. I don't think I ever got a full 8 hours of sleep unless it was the Saturday night into Sunday when there were no scouts at camp. But yeah, there was. I think I might even have cracked over 50 hours if you depending on how you want to count it because I remember it was summer of 2016, the summer of the bear.
Yes, the summer
Um,
of the bear.
we had multiple nights in a row where bears came into camp, and the process for when bears come into camp is what's called a staff parade. Essentially, staff grab pots, pans, anything to
Light
make noise.
makers.
Yeah, and we basically do a couple laps through camp singing songs, banging pots and pans, scared away. This bear gave zero fucks about that. It would go off for like a half hour and then would come right back every night. And by Wednesday night, we had to do it. Thursday night, we had to do it. And Friday night, we had to do it. And by Friday night, by Thursday night, I think we had to do 2 Wednesday night and we had 1 Thursday night. And then at midnight Thursday night, another troop came and said the bear's near their camp. And I think about half the staff in the lodge said, fuck it. I'm not getting up to do another goddamn bear. There was almost fist fights over how to handle this bear.
Yeah. I remember one of them was on the 4th of July because before we realized the problem was going to get that bad, our kind of excuse was, oh, we can't have fires, so we're doing what's called Winton fireworks. The staff all
Yeah.
runs through the woods.
That was like a week or two before. This was toward the end because that was acceptable because we only had half as many troops in camp, so the back half of camp was quiet. So the bear was kind of sniffing
yeah.
around the back half of camp. There weren't as many people for it to be afraid of. The next week, however, that's when Mama Bear kept raiding the trash trailer.
Oh,
But
man.
so yeah, Wednesday night was I slept but did not get much sleep because we got woken up twice to do staff parade. All day, woke up Wednesday, did all day Thursday, up all night Thursday night with only maybe an hour of sleep because we got called twice to do a yogi. And then I think maybe if this is where the sleep deprivation comes in because I don't 100% remember. And then we were gonna get up a certain boss of ours who will remain nameless, Ben, came around rousing everyone for a third one, and I'm pretty sure I don't remember because I was trying to fall asleep. I think I told him to fuck off. It's basically the staff devolved into 3 camps: chase the bear off, have the Forest Service come shoot the bear, or the small majority of people, I'd say small majority, the small minority of people who just didn't care anymore. I was in that don't care anymore camp. So didn't get any sleep Thursday night. Went all day Friday, which Friday is a shit show of a day. And then this was the last year before we started doing the double knot online merit badge entry. So Friday night, I was up all night doing blue card.
Blue card party!
Blue card party. Filling out all the rank requirements for rifle, shotgun, and archery on blue cards for kids and sorting them into the different troops' mailboxes.
For the uninitiated, blue cards are how we keep track of the merit badges that the scouts earn, because in those merit badges there's a bunch of requirements, and we filled them out.
Think of it as a little 1-page perforated to be ripped into 3 pieces, a copy for you, a copy for the counselor, and a copy for your troop. That you had to fill out what badge you did, what troop you're in. There was a spot for the counselor to mark off the requirements. Basically, a little merit badge passport that we had to fill out for every goddamn child.
Exactly.
Bless them. Bless their sweet little souls. So yeah, Friday all night doing that, up all day, all morning Saturday for leaving camp and cleaning camp. I think I woke up Wednesday at 7:30 a.m. and I finally was able to sleep and slept for about 13 hours Saturday at like 1:30 p.m. So yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. Definitely not the worst I've felt while going through sleep deprivation, though, because I'm convinced if you've ever been to any sort of summer camp, I don't care if it's church camp, Boy Scout camp, Girl Scout camp, whatever, nature camp, every camp has like we have camp spirit or staff spirit or scout spirit. I'm convinced camp spirit is just adrenaline. Adrenaline and sleep deprivation. That's 100% it. As Hawkeye says, the overproduction of adrenaline can lead to psychotic behavior, and if that doesn't describe summer camp staff, I don't know what doesn't. But yeah, I have more sleep deprivation stories, but I'll save them for later in the episode. So
yes,
as soon as Hawkeye says that overproduction of adrenaline can produce psychotic behavior, Radar gets all wide-eyed and stares at him, and he's like, "Why are you staring at me like that?" "I'm not staring at you. Must be your eyes." And Hawkeye walks out, taking a clothesline of clothes with him as he goes. So we can assume he did the rest of the day in surgery, and now it's night. So I'm assuming we're up to 48 hours. We've got to be up to 48 hours.
No question. Yeah.
So sleep-deprived Hawkeye is walking around like a sad late 90s, early 2000s boy band album art cover in the rain, observing a guard with a rifle and wounded in post-op. And I would like to ask you to talk us through your thoughts on this scene he has with Trapper, him realizing that a sleep-deprived Hawkeye trying to articulate his thoughts on the war to Trapper. What were we thinking during this scene? Because I have opinions.
This scene is why I was surprised for a brief second at the beginning of the episode when I thought that Alan Alda did not direct this episode.
He did not direct, he wrote. He co-wrote.
Yeah. So this feels very Alda, you know, the dramatic speech, the camera pan in. But it's just so odd because you can tell that this is kind of supposed to be like a deep moment, but it's also through the lens of him being out of his mind, sleep deprived. But it's deeply relatable because I know for a fact, probably I've had them with you, but I've definitely had at least a dozen of these same conversations, in the sense of there is a point that I am so absolutely convinced of that nobody else can fully understand because nobody else is as off their nut as I am at that moment.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and when I think you've seen me at camp long enough that when I get sleep deprived or drunk, or well, I don't really get drunk, but the only time I've been out of my control of my faculties and to a certain extent was after I got surgery and was coming down off the anesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
sleep deprivation feels a lot like that to me. And what happens is I don't get like loopy. I just start to talk more.
Yeah.
I would say there's less of a filter between my brain and my mouth, but that's not necessarily it because I don't start saying like outlandish, ridiculous shit. I just say more of it. So I say more words, not crazier words. But yeah, I kind of want to save my thoughts for the end of the episode. But yeah, this sleep deprived Hawkeye, and I get the episode is called Dr. Pierce and Mr. Hyde for a reason. There's like when he's awake, he's aware of like the surgery and he can do the things, and then at night when he's just walking around sleep deprived, he's kind of like forgets that he's in Korea in a war zone. I don't know, but there's something about the episode overall that just something isn't quite connecting right, and I don't know how to explain it. But I'll be able to articulate better once we've seen the whole episode.
Absolutely. Because I have some thoughts in that vein too, but
Hawkeye. After Hawkeye discussed with Trapper that he thinks there's a war going on, he's going to try to figure out who started it so he can convince them to stop it. He heads over to Radar, who is reading some old World War II comics, and will tangent for a second. And he mentions that he's reading old World War II comics. He asks what Holocaust means, to which Hawkeye corrects him. It's Holocaust, and it means an immense conflagration or a big fire. He then asks Radar if he can send a telegram. He says, sure. But before then, Hawkeye asks what he's reading. He mentions it's World War II comics, and Hawkeye goes on the weird sleep deprivation tangent of discussing what songs came from the Second World War. And the first one is I'll Be Home for Christmas, which, of course, I went on a deep dive of. Because so why wouldn't I? It's not really that deep of a dive. I'll Be Home for Christmas was a song recorded by Bing Crosby in 1943. I would imagine a lot of the average person currently on the street today may not realize this. It is written and sung from the point of view of a soldier in the Second World War. And I'll be home for Christmas. And then the last line of the verse or the chorus is, I'll be home for Christmas, if only in my dreams, because the war clearly wasn't ending by that Christmas or the next Christmas. So,
yeah.
Crosby recorded it, and it instantly became very popular, both with the public at home and troops on in the combat theaters, to the point where a representative of one of the Army's newspapers said, Crosby has done more for military morale than anyone else of his era.
Wow.
Which is impressive if you consider people like Bob Hope. But weird, strangely enough, because the British are weird people. Hello, British listeners. We love you. The British banned it from the radio because they thought it might make lower the soldiers' morale and make them more melancholy. Which, okay, fair. But, whatever. And then Hawkeye, in only a way Alan Alda can, transfers from being teary-eyed over a song about a soldier longing for Christmas time at home to Der Fuhrer's Face by Spike Jonze. Now, are you familiar with Spike Jonze, Ethan?
I am not. I was familiar with the song that he was singing from various pop culture references, but...
Okay, so here's the thing. So Spike Jonze is evidence that TikTok cringe culture doesn't just belong the like wackiness that is internet, like YouTube and TikTok and Vine and Instagram culture. That type of stuff existed throughout all of history.
Yes, history is incredibly cyclical. I'm aware of this. Spike
Jonze was essentially a musical comedian. He has records that are parodies of classical music with just the wackiest instruments. He has some of my personal favorites are Cocktails for Two, where I don't know if you've ever heard the old song Cocktails for Two, Ethan.
Yes.
It's Cocktails for Two, but each line is punctuated by sound effects that represent that line. So it's like on a secret rendezvous on a secluded avenue, and after he says secluded avenue, it's just like big, bell-ended horns honking and shit. It's such a ridiculous. Well, it's so dumb. It's so crazy. There's the Hawaiian war chant where it's just Spike Jones doing like weird throat noises the whole time. And then, of course, I would say arguably his most popular piece of work is what Hawkeye is singing, a piece called "De Führer's Face," recorded in 1942, and it is essentially just making fun of Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, and it's great. There's a lot of really excellent wordplay in the song, and that I really appreciated. And I have to tell this story because I feel so bad for this poor woman. God rest her soul. She has to be dead by now because she was ancient when I saw her. When I was in high school, in my U.S. history class.
Oh God.
There was a lady from the Placer County Museum, old lady, who came in to give a talk to our class about living in this area during World War II, and she talked about the Japanese internment because a lot of the West Coast Japanese, there were a lot of Japanese that lived in this area where you and I did live. I still live here. You are often wherever the hell you are. But there was a big Japanese civilian population in our area, and there were a lot of families that lost their farms, lost their property because they were gone for so long because they got, arrested by their government for reasons that are definitely not okay by today's standards. But the other thing she mentioned is and God bless her, she tried to relate to the teenagers. She played Spike Jones' Der Führer's Face as here's how people at home were coping comedically or trying to make light of the situation. And God bless this poor woman. I was the only one in the class who appreciated it because I was knowledgeable enough about World War II to like get the subtle jokes that Spike Jones was putting in there. The rest of my class were a bunch of assholes and just stared off into the distance because all they heard were just Spike Jones making noises. But God, there is such good wordplay in that song. I'm trying to think, now that I've said it, I can't think of the line. So yeah, Spike Jones and I'll Be Home for Christmas. And Radar is just staring at Hawkeye like, what's happening right now? Hawkeye says, I'm ready to send a telegram. I would like to send a telegram to Harry S. Truman, the White House. Dear Harry, who is responsible? Sincerely yours, a dissatisfied customer. Ethan?
Yeah.
I have been sleep deprived at camp.
Yes.
I have never been so sleep deprived that I walked into the lodge at 2 a.m., called the executive of the Golden Empire Council, asked him who's responsible, and then hang up. This is where I'm starting to lose. My disbelief is hard to suspend that Hawkeye is sleep deprived, ergo he single-handedly tries to end the war. That's where my brain is going, huh? Help me understand, Ethan.
I think I'm really trying to save my overarching thoughts for the end of the episode, but what I think the joke this is trying to make is, yes, we have been sleep deprived, but we have never also been sleep deprived while being stuck in the middle of a conflict like this. Not only that, we have never had a cause that we were so passionate about, like Hawkeye is ending bloodshed.
True.
So I think the joke is that he is not thinking things through, but he's still willing to do whatever it takes to what he believes will end the chaos.
Okay. Fair enough. To that point, the next morning, so we're easily up to above 50 hours now, 55 plus hours. He is bothering O'Brien, the helicopter pilot, saying that here's Hawkeye's strategy. Don't get in your helicopter. Cool. All right. Ignoring Hawkeye completely, as you should, O'Brien then gets in his helicopter and flies away. And Hawkeye runs out to treat more wounded, and we see him snap back into Surgeon Hawkeye mode. So assume another, minimum 12 hours of surgery, so we're easily up to 65 plus hours, 70 hours.
Yeah,
we're
I'd
at
call it
72 hours.
65. Okay,
wow. I'm just going to say we're at 72 hours. We're going to round up.
All right.
By the time he's done with all the latrine stuff, easily, so we get back from commercial break. Henry is pissed. He told Hawkeye, "You are off the benches. You've disobeyed orders. You're not listening. You're clearly off in your own little world. You need to stop and go get some sleep." And Hawkeye is super convincingly paying attention. And by that, I mean he's barely paying attention.
Yeah.
Hawkeye, at this point, Hawkeye is in his own little bubble. He's very little is penetrating the sleep deprivation aura around Hawkeye now. Radar then informs Henry that General Clayton is mad as hell and he's going to find out who did it.
But Hawkeye's trying to find out who did it.
This is true. He said, Radar informs him that someone tried to send a telegram to the White House from camp. And Henry, who is the one person in camp with the mental faculty to communicate the sending of a telegram? I'll give you a hint. He's about 5'4" and standing in front of you. But anyway, now he's freaking out because General Clayton's on his way, to which he rightfully asks, "Do we have enough sherry and ginger ale for the general?" To which Radar responds, "Nobody does, sir." Which, dear God, sherry and ginger ale, that is a
Yeah, I've had sherry, and I not once while I was swilling it did I think, ooh, you know what this would mix great with? Ginger. Go ahead.
But here's the problem, Ethan. When someone says to us nowadays ginger ale, you and I thinking like Canada Dry or Schweppes. Back then, they're probably thinking more of ginger beer, which is much more gingery.
Ah, yes. That's fair. That is, yes. Okay. I do like me a good Moscow Mule, although I know that does not contain sherry, but you know what I mean.
So I will say this. I absolutely found a recipe for homemade ginger beer that I will be adding to my brewing list. And I would love to make a homemade Moscow Mule. But anyway, moving on from that. Hawkeye storms into Margaret's tent, which is continuing the grand old tradition of Margaret having no privacy in her living space. He goes straight to Margaret's footlocker, opens it, expecting to find Frank sniffing her dress shields, which is just an image for you. Major Burns, however, is not there because he's giving a lecture in the mess tent to the new arrivals to camp, the new enlisted men, about why they're fighting in Korea, which Hawkeye finds very useful as he is trying to find out what they're all doing there. So Hawkeye interrupts the lecture, asking, "What are we doing here?" To which Frank rightfully is annoyed. And I will say this, Frank has a line in here that is surprisingly tactful. He explains why the troops are there, and then he offers the audience to ask him questions. And he says, "Now I could tell you all this, but and this is the line that surprised me from Frank. The essence of good teaching is to answer whatever question is ever most in your mind." Which, Jesus, Frank, that is some actual good thinking. Don't just dispense knowledge that no one cares about. Find out what people actually want to know and teach them. I am surprised by the good wisdom of Frank here, and I think I may have blown a blood vessel in my cerebral cortex saying that, but
I know I
good
did.
on you, Frank. So Hawkeye and Frank have this back and forth, which through the entire time, one of the soldiers is asleep with his head leaning on the tent post, actively snoring, which I love. The entire time he's just quietly snoring through the entire conversation. Hawkeye asks why are they there. Frank asks to fight the communists, and Hawkeye is kind of like, I'm not making fun, Frank. Why? Was it something we said, something we didn't say? Why do the communists hate us? Why should North Korea want to take over America? And Frank gives this very, McCarthyism. They want to destroy our way of life. They've never seen a bathroom, and believe you me, they want one. And Hawkeye takes that literally and says, they can have mine, which springs forth Hawkeye's plan to send the officer's latrine to North Korea, which... Okay, Hawkeye. So, Hawkeye is doing what is essentially a ye olde eBay listing, taking a picture of the latrine, decorating it with toilet paper. Hawkeye is fully off the deep end now. So it looks to be late in the afternoon of the day that he's doing this. I'm saying 100% he's hit 72 hours, maybe even closer to 80 at this point.
Sure.
No sleep. Margaret and Frank come to question what he's doing. Trapper and Radar are trying to sedate Hawkeye. Frank, through his sheer incompetence and being Frank, places himself in the wrong place at the wrong time to receive a dose of whatever knocking out agent Radar and Trapper dispense. So that plan's, in the toilet. Haha. Henry explains to Trapper that someone's been sending letters to Harry Truman. Radar finally cops up that it's Hawkeye. Trapper tells Henry we have to actually actively medicate and sedate Hawkeye because he is starting to become a danger to himself and others. He spikes Hawkeye's martini. Hawkeye goes, I'm just kind of speeding through the end of this because I won't lie, I'm kind of over this episode at the moment.
Yeah.
But long story short, General Clayton shows up. Comedy ensues because he gets into the latrine right as Hawkeye's driving off with it. And then the scene transitions to the ending of the episode. We learn that Hawkeye passed out not long after hooking up the latrine. Henry and Trapper have a short conversation. He's saying, why does he do these things? And as you alluded to, Ethan, it's because Hawkeye is dedicated to his job as a doctor and a surgeon. Right, for right or wrong, he's gonna overstep his bounds because he believes it's the right thing to do. And we close on Hawkeye resting peacefully in the background. So buttons on your underwear.
Why?
What? Now that we've gotten to the end, there's a lot I want to unpack here. Number one, the kind of correlation between sleep deprivation and mental health. I am not a doctor. Ethan is not a doctor. We can only speak from personal experiences. Please don't come at us if we misspeak or say something out of context or anything like that. This is the first, I would say, in a series of episodes that we're going to get about Hawkeye and kind of his mental state throughout the run of the show. I don't know how I feel about the execution on this one, because on one part, yes, the demands placed upon Hawkeye and the other members of camp are extreme. There's sleep deprivation, there's overwork, there's stress, there's obviously the associated stress and fear of nearby combat and PTSD and all these things. I don't want to say I didn't like it. I don't know where I sit as far as how it was portrayed in this episode. I'm still trying to formulate my thoughts into words. What would you say along those lines? Like, is it?
I want to know why Alan Alda loves anthologies as much as he does, which is not a slight towards them necessarily. It seems like this is his kind of his MO for it, you know? He really enjoys doing these, you know, uh, one overarching story, sure, but a bunch of little non-connected inner workings.
Yeah. The part that sticks to me is that transition where we see him at night walking around not sleeping, and he goes from being Hawkeye who is tired but aware to Hawkeye who is his sleep deprivation has caused him to have like temporary amnesia and he doesn't realize he's in a war zone anymore, and he has to go to a trapper and like talk through his. It's very, I don't want to say weird. I don't know. I have not been in a military conflict and sleep deprived at the same time, but and this goes for some of the future episodes we get with Hawkeye. Some of the Hawkeye mental well-being episodes hit really well and they're very well done, and others leave me at the end going, huh? I don't think that's how that works. What? And this is one of those for me. Like, sleep deprivation, it feels like they wanted to do a haha funny sleep deprivation, Hawkeye's doing silly things, and a sleep deprivation is screwing with Hawkeye's mental stability and well-being, and they kind of jammed them together. Like,
Yeah,
it should have been one or the other.
if I were to guess, I'd, you know, in defense of Alan Alda and everyone else on the writing staff, this seems like kind of an early attempt for them to really dip their toes into the more serious pool, with the caveat that there still had to be, you know, funny, laugh track, etc., etc. They're trying to make a point, but it feels like they got kind of creatively stifled. But it's like I said, I don't know that the anthology method was the best way to convey any of their points in this.
And there are some fantastic episodes that look at sleep deprivation, overwork, and stress. Some that come to mind are Crisis, Deluge, I think one called Our Finest Hour, maybe? Oh no, I think that's the Clips one. One of the episodes that gets a lot of flack that I can't wait to discuss many, many seasons from now is called Dreams. That is an interesting one to look at, like the sleep deprivation and what the war does to your psyche. I think there's a lot of interesting things to talk about, and I know there's a lot of people out there that don't agree with me now that I've said that, because Dreams is one of those episodes that's very divisive. But I don't know. The OR is another episode that comes to mind, but this, I don't know if it's because it focuses solely on Hawkeye as opposed to the camp as a whole going through it. There's just something off about it, and I can't quite put my finger on it. And again, that's not to discredit what sleep deprivation in a combat zone does to someone. I have had sleep deprivation at camp that's more what Hawkeye went through in the first half of the episode, which is I'm tired, I'm a little loopy, but I can push through.
Well, so kind of the question I want to pose to you then is, we both recognize we have no idea what it's like to be in an active war zone. Yeah, you know, we can both make our peace with that. What is sleep deprivation's overarching effect on you?
So I was about to get into this. Most of the time, it is loopy, irritable. I know when I've gone a few days, not necessarily no sleep, like multiple days of no sleep, but I know, like, honestly, this last week, 2 weeks ago now, the week that you were gone mostly, I was on a complete opposite 180 degree sleep schedule. I was waking up at 8 p.m., going to bed at 11 a.m. because I just let my sleep schedule get pushed further and further back by work until it flipped. And then I went through a week of dragging it back, and I was irritable. I was annoyed. I had basically no social battery. I did not want to be around people. That's what sleep deprivation normally is. I'm a little loopy. I'm a little irritable. However, There is one other time I've been severely sleep deprived, and there were other factors involved in it that took it to anxiety attack and paranoia. This was was it spring or was it fall? Whenever Fleet Week is. When's Fleet Week? Is Fleet Week in October or is it in April?
You can
I don't
say
remember.
either, and I will believe you.
Whenever Fleet Week is, the weekend where the Navy in their various port of calls do air shows and tours of the ships and all that jazz. It was Fleet Week 2014, and we were going to be going as a Boy Scout troop. We were taking a bunch of the kids into San Francisco. We were going to be staying overnight on one of the museum ships that's moored in San Francisco Bay. It's called the Balclutha. It's an old sailing ship, like a little trading ship. But you can stay overnight on it in the officers' quarters. And then I can't remember if it was we got there, watched the air show, slept, and then left the next day, or if it was got there, it was get there, do the Balclutha tour, sleep, get up the next day, watch the air show, walk around that air, Pier 39 and all that, and then go home. For a multitude of reasons, this was the first big out in public scout trip I had done since an event that's going to get brought up a lot in the future on this show. In the summer of 2013, my scout troop, specifically me and the car of scouts and adult leaders that I was in a head-on car accident on our way to summer camp that killed the driver sitting next to me. Now, I say that very lightheartedly because this was 10 years ago now. It happened, it sucked, it was a thing. However, I had not been on a big major scout trip since that had happened. I had to get surgery on my arm. All the kids were okay. Unfortunately, one of the adult leaders passed away. Fast forward to this Fleet Week trip. I did not sleep well multiple days before it. I did not sleep the night before driving down to San Francisco. I did not drive. I was a passenger. I did not sleep well the night on the ship because the ship was rocking gently in the harbor. And at one point in the night, the door for the officer's cabin came unlatched, and everyone was too tired to get up and latch it. So every about minute and a half, the door would swing open, and then the ship would rock back, and this 30-pound door would crash for the entire night until one of the adult leaders finally got fed up with it and got up and closed it. All of this at the same time. This is San Francisco in 2014, so right when it started to be known that it was getting kind of sketchy to be in San Francisco. If you're from San Francisco or live in San Francisco, your city is lovely. I want to visit it more. Hang on. I'll throw San Francisco a bone. Old San Francisco is a lovely place. The Golden Gate Park is lovely. Pier 39 is lovely. Recently, it's gotten really bad. And this was right around the time that I forgive me if I misspeak about this case. That was right around that time that young college-age lady got stabbed by that homeless guy. You remember that story from 10 years ago now? Random homeless guy just stabbed this poor. Yeah. So all that was happening around the same time, and I was an adult leader in charge of children, and I had a full-blown PTSD-induced panic attack in the middle of Ghirardelli Square. Not like screaming and I had to get tackled by security, but like there are too many people. There are too many people. I can't keep track of everyone. Where are my scouts? I haven't slept in 2.5 days. Fuck. Yeah. Yep. It was not fun. It was really not fun. And for the other problem was for about 1.5 years after that accident, I didn't have night terrors, but I was the stereotypical when you nudge someone on the shoulder and they immediately bolt awake and I'm here, adrenaline pumping. And to a certain extent, I can sleep through a freight train driving through my bedroom, but as soon as you tap my shoulder or something, I am bolt awake, and adrenaline is pumping. Yeah. PTSD is not fun, kids. And this is weird to say because I've not been formally diagnosed with PTSD, and a lot of people assume PTSD is only from military service and combat. No, PTSD can be from a lot of other things, and you should get diagnosed for it. I have not, because I don't have medical insurance, but I can tell you, based on many a thing that has happened to me in the last 10 years, I 100% have a little bit of PTSD, and that's okay. But anyway, yeah, sleep deprivation, normally loopy, little irritable, little cranky, want to be left alone. Severe sleep deprivation in the worst possible circumstances. Very paranoid, very terrified.
Yikes.
And if you think that's the most open I'll be on this podcast, oh, you've got another thing coming.
I don't
Stay
think
tuned.
that. The listener might. But
anyway, so Ethan, what personal traumatic drama do you want to share with us, and expose yourself to us, but not in that way?
Oh, but I had my robe unbuttoned and everything.
Oh, gross.
So I guess to answer the question I posed to you, yes, irritable, very irritable. But I have a tendency to get lost in my own brain as it is, so I just kind of I get highway hypnosis at any given moment because I just start thinking about something and I think about it and I focus on it, and then next thing I'll know.
Genuinely, one of the most irritating things you do, and I love you, but one of the most irritating things you do is shit like driving from California to Kansas in 23 hours.
Actually, it's not a traumatic story, but it is a story I'll share in that vein. I can't remember what highway it was anymore. But going through Utah, there is a 2-lane piece of blacktop that I love, that will spit you out right at the east end of Reno. And so I was taking it.
It's not 50, is it? Is that?
It is 50. Thank you.
It's the lonely. Yeah, it's from Fallon to Eli.
Yeah, so
through Austin.
I had just been in a car wreck, so I had to fly out to Kansas to pick up a car that I had got out here and then drive it back to California because I was still living there at the time. So I'm on Highway 50 going through Utah, and just I'm not even going to be able to remember the town, and that's okay because it's not really important to the story. In Utah, on Highway 50, there is a very, very large wind farm. And during the day, that is absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. Anthony's laughing because I sent him a video. So it's probably
I was on a phone call when this happened. We were on a phone call when this happened.
Yeah, that's right. I was on. So I'm driving and I'm, making a pretty good click, but it's late and I'm tired. I flew into Kansas to get this car, and I'm cannonballing the way home because I had work the day after next. So I had to be home. I didn't feel like stopping. I crest this hill and it's just darkness, and the stars are out, but it's a smuggler's moon, so it's dark out. And in unison, 36 red lights, hundreds of feet in the air in front of me, all turn on at once. Now, sleep-deprived Ethan brain thinks, oh fuck, I'm gonna get abducted, I'm gonna get probed, I don't know what's going on, etc., etc. And so for a full 30 seconds, what do you think it was, 30 seconds while I was on this call with you?
So you were on the call as you were talking, and from what it looked like in the video sent, you had crested a hill, and there was like a second where all these lights were off, and here's what we heard on our end. Da-da-da, Ethan talking, holy shit! And then you got off the call and we're like, what? I'm assuming you pulled over at that point and then realized what you were looking at. But yeah, I'll put a picture up because I pulled up just so I knew where this is. This is right outside of Roosevelt,
yes,
Utah.
Thank you.
On Highway 191.
Oh God. Okay, so it wasn't 50, it was 191.
So yeah, you probably took Highway 40 through Colorado, and then a 40 splits 40 191 goes north, and then 191 continues west into Salt Lake City. But no, 40, yeah, it's 40 191 that you are on. So right outside Roosevelt, Utah. And you know what else is also right outside Roosevelt, Utah, audience? The Skinwalker Ranch, where all the terrible, scary Skinwalker stories come from.
Yeehaw.
If you don't know what a Skinwalker is, Google it. I'm sure you'll be fine.
So, to that end, that was a hit of adrenaline that my fucking sleep-deprived mind did not need. So, for like the next 40 or 50 miles, my eyes started playing tricks
Yeah.
on me.
So to clarify something for the audience, what Ethan had seen is the aircraft avoidance lights that you see on top
Yes.
of like antennas and skyscrapers. Those wind farm towers are tall enough that by law they have to have the blinking red beacon light. But when you have 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 dozen wind farm towers with one of those on each one, it becomes too dazzling to have them all blinking out of sync. So they all blink in fucking unison. And Ethan had come over the hill, and then they all turned on for a second, and then all turned off. And they just blink in that slow, repetitive, and it scared the fuck out of Ethan. And once we realized what it was funny as shit.
Of course it was. But it was that adrenaline hit, and for the next probably 40 or 50 miles, my eyes were playing tricks. Like the way that the high beams were hitting the sagebrush on the side of the road, the shadows they were casting made me kept like itching towards my brake pedal because I thought someone or something was about to run out into the road and I was going to hit them. And I credit it to that little spike in my fucking already woozy mind to cause those kind of optical illusions that made me shit my pants. But
good. This is good.
Yeah, so aggravated, way too engrossed in my own mind and light hallucinations, I suppose.
Seeing demons. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Where are my meds?
Where are your meds? So yeah, back to the episode. I appreciate what the episode was trying to do. Personally, for me, I get it, but I also don't get it. I think there are much better episodes of both personally for Hawkeye experiencing the mental trauma and strain of war, and also just the in general for the camp going through the motions of dealing with stuff. I think there's better episodes. By no means do I think this episode is bad. I just it's falling into that same trap that some of the season 1 episodes have done, where we like it, we agree with it, it's good, I'm loving the vibe, it's just a tiny bit too goofy. And if you think differently on it, audience, please converse with us about it, because I want to get where you guys think we're off base on it, because this is definitely one of those episodes where opinions will vary. But on that note, Ethan, what would you rate the lovely, the beautiful Dr. Pierce and Mr. Hyde?
I'm sitting right at a stiff and sturdy 3 out of 5 for me. It's not that I find it bad. I just feel that a 60% in the grand scheme of things is fair for this episode. It had a million different ideas, and it didn't want to stick with one of them. And like I've said, I've got my opinions on the anthology mode of storytelling for this particular episode. So I'm not going to rate it very highly. I wouldn't seek it out, but I would watch it again.
I will mention something. I'm going to backtrack to the middle of the episode where Hawkeye's talking to Trapper, because I want to point this out, because it's going to be evidence in a future episode where I talk about some stuff. When Hawkeye talks to Trapper, Trapper is very, I don't want to say passive. He's very, look, go to sleep. You'll wake up tomorrow. You'll still be in Korea. That sucks, but at least while you're asleep, you can escape it for a little while. Trapper is very like, get over it. And I don't say that to be mean to Trapper, but he's very much a go with the flow kind of guy, in my opinion. And he's telling Hawkeye, look, this sucks. Sucks that we're here. I don't want to be here. You don't want to be here. But you're not going to make it better by just overthinking the war and not sleeping. Go to sleep. Get away from it for a few hours. Wake up tomorrow and deal with it anew. What thinks you about Trapper's response to that before I give my rating? Because I want to get you on record, because again, this will be evidence exhibit 132 for a future episode. So
and the audience knows that I'm towards Trapper. So I don't know how much weight my opinion should have, I'm looking at it through the lens of, look, Hawkeye has been, kind of forcing himself to stay awake to do all these operations, but Trapper has been, doing a lot of cutting too. I mean, he had been cutting for probably, like, I think it would be safe to say that at the beginning of the episode, Trapper had been cutting almost as long as Hawkeye, maybe not 20 full hours, but
Hmm.
I'd definitely say 10, probably 15. he,
Yeah.
he he's tired and sleep deprived too, and when you have your friend wake you up in the middle of the night with some
On
bullshit
some bullshit.
that you know is extremely important to him but doesn't matter in the grand scheme, I would be pretty laissez-faire about it too.
Well, and that's the question. I pose it to you, but I'll also pose it to the audience. Is Hawkeye, is this, I don't want to say is it Hawkeye's fault, but like, is Hawkeye's sleep deprivation, how much of it is his fault? Is it him being too, yes, dedicated to his craft, which is noble and good, but as we've talked about in previous episodes, Hawkeye, you are good, but you aren't superhuman. Go to sleep. You're gonna make mistakes. You need sleep. Yes, you are dedicated and should help your patients, but at some point, your health and well being has to come first. And he passed that point early in this episode, and it's a little frustrating for him to be like, because is how much of it is out of Hawkeye's control because it's a little bit of, I don't want to say Hawkeye has a mental condition, but is there are people who are obsessive compulsive, and is Hawkeye being obsessive compulsive? Is it his ego? Is it just lack of good decision making? Like where on this like Venn diagram of things does Hawkeye fall during this whole sleep deprivation thing?
when you
Because it's
have
a
when you have your friends literally drugging you to make you go to sleep, I have to imagine that it's 90% self-imposed. Yeah, maybe they could have done a better job keeping him out of surgery. I mean, there's a million, they could have chained him to the bed, put him in traction, etc., etc. But
yeah, put a guard on him
yeah,
like they have. Yeah, at what point, but then that raises the question kind of in my mind, and again, this is definitely the point where we're reading more into the episode than anyone intended it to ever be read into. But at what point is it Hawkeye white knighting? Is it what reason do they have to not do any of those things sooner? Why didn't Henry push harder? What, yeah, it's Hawkeye choosing not to sleep, but at what point do Henry and the rest of the camp have an obligation to say, you are a threat, not a threat, but you are entering, you're dangerous to yourself and others' territory and should not be operating? Because I think he hit that, like, maybe not the first surgery session after the cleanup, but definitely the second one when Radar is stopping is like, no, MP, you're under house arrest, Hawkeye, for 48 hours.
in the spirit of overanalyzing this episode, I would recall that this is not exactly new to them. I mean, it's easy for us as outside observers to say this, but I remember when, as you referenced earlier, the name of the episode eludes me, but when Hawkeye missed that shrapnel in that kid, and he stayed up for days.
Yeah,
Sticky
Sticky
Wicket.
Wicket.
Yes, I think the gang, the crew, if you will, is used to this kind of compulsive, obsessive side to him, and are much more willing to take it in stride or outright ignore it, whichever terminology you prefer.
Yeah, and it sucks because there's an episode where they play with because we've talked about it before. There's sleep deprivation, there's potential alcoholic inebriation that goes into these surgeries, because clearly we see Hawkeye and the other surgeons drinking, and then they get immediately called into surgery. And then that raises the question of, well, how much alcohol did they drink? Are they okay to operate? And we kind of don't think about it. And the crappy thing is, there's an episode that is a factor in, but unfortunately the rest of the episode is, it's an interesting episode because there are things that certain characters do that don't make sense for their character. But there is a part of that episode where one of the surgeons is operating under par because of choices they made, and the camp reacts accordingly, but then that kind of gets thrown out the window because there's a whole nother plot going on that affect. I want the show to do what this episode was trying to do, but I want it to do it in a way where it's the sole focus. And like I said, I think they tried to do a little bit of the serious sleep deprivation, mental health stuff, but there was, on top of that, there was also, Frank passing out dramatically and General Clayton getting locked in the latrine as it gets pulled away, and just, I don't know. I think there are better episodes that show some of the stuff this episode was trying to do.
Sure.
But I say all that to say I agree with you. I'm going to rate it 3 out of 5. It's not a bad episode. I have a lot of fun with it. I as I've said before, I like Alan Alda. I like when Alan gets to take the spotlight a little bit because he is such a fun actor to watch act. But yeah, there are just some things that don't click for me in this episode. So 3 out of 5. And before we go over to the audience, I do want to point something very exciting out.
Oh boy!
On our previous episode, we mentioned that I went and cut in mentioning that we now have a Patreon page that you can support the podcast at. If you so choose, it does not affect what content gets released as far as you being able to see it. The whole point of the Patreon is to just have a little bit of a nest egg, so to speak, to do some extra bonus projects and some other stuff for the show. And I am very excited to announce that we have our first 2 patrons. We have as the tier system on Patreon that we set up it is based on military ranks. So we have Lieutenant Mike Jameson and Private Jared Gallagher, our first 2 patrons. Applaud them. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support, and we're totally not going to spend it on alcohol. With that being said, if you would like to join the Patreon and support us, you are more than welcome to. Links will be in the description. And if you don't, that is perfectly fine. Your support is welcome just by listening to and sharing and discussing the episodes with us. And we appreciate that as well. With that being said, on to the audience responses on this episode. And very quickly, we had some responses from the previous episode as well that I have to go find.
Yay!
So, previous episode was for the good of the outfit, and we had a lot of discussion about everyone's motivations to get the shelling of Taidong dealt with. I seem to think that Clayton and Stoner were kind of victims of the system, same as Hawkeye and Trapper. Ethan was a little bit more on the government killed JFK side of things.
They did. They fucking did. And Martin Luther King.
Oh no, this podcast is going to suddenly disappear. So Donut Eater 111 was very passionate about responding to some of these questions. We basically asked Clayton, Stoner, and Burns, what were their motivations? Where did they sit on the spectrum? He said Frank, he says, I'd say his response is more in his blind patriotism than actual fear of consequences, but it's probably a mix of both. Stoner, he used to think he was 100% bullshitting, but he's come around to the idea of thinking he was honest at the start and only later gets sucked up into the cover-up. As for Clayton, he felt like he knows the truth and is actively trying to cover it up, but maybe more because of pressure from above than feeling that covering it up is actually the right thing to do. And he says I may be right about him wanting to warn Hawkeye and Trapper rather than threatening. So I like that there's not a solid this is what everyone was saying. It's kind of, you have to infer it based on how you read the situation. But yeah, fun times. But on to this week's episodes. Dr. Pierce and Mr. Hyde. Running through our ratings real quick. Chief Matt Forever says 4 out of 5. Definitely a new story for the series at this point, and a great episode showing how Alan Alda can carry an episode. There are some great lines, especially Frank talking about the enemy wanting bathrooms. Alan Alda did a great job of showing exhaustion. Yeah, I don't know about you, Ethan. I 100% thought Hawkeye was absolutely dead ass about to pass out at every moment in this episode.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I thought Alan Alda might be method acting. How good? I guess how bad he looked.
Tony Eater 111 says 4.2 out of 5. A good early example of Hawkeye's deteriorating mental health. Oh no. Which he loves seeing
Spoilers!
explored. Don't worry, there's no dearth of Hawkeye's mental instability. While there are better examples later, I agree. I love watching Alan Alda's performance as he really sells Hawkeye's physical and mental exhaustion. Yay. 3.5 out of 5 from Mike Jameson. Always seemed a little out of place in season 2, a little surreal and melancholy, yet still an interesting, if not fully entertaining episode. Jim K says 2. Good quotable lines in it, but never thought the story really funny. Chad Smith says 3.6 out of 5. An interesting look at the mundane horror and exhaustion of war. Hawkeye is very convincingly asleep on his feet, but the ending with Clayton in the latrine is a little too big of a tonal shift. Brett Rader, who's a name I have not seen on here before, one of the first movements into the brutal demand and mental fatigue of war. A balance of humor, but one of the first where Hawkeye is a little more vulnerable. This season was amazing, and really started showing the undertones that the toll of war is taking in several episodes, in his opinion. I agree with that. Season 2 starts to get a little more spicy. I'll also throw out Jared over on Instagram says another episode that's a little more somber and shows the effect that an effect of war that is not often talked about. So yeah, those are our collective ratings from the people of the world who listen to this podcast. Yeah. Wow. So with that is the end of Doc. Kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Talk about a shotgun spread.
So that was Dr. Pierce and Mr. Hyde. If you somehow missed out talking about this episode, that is perfectly okay. You can always head over to the various social medias that we are on and discuss your thoughts on episodes, past, present, and eventually future. We're everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, email,
OnlyFan,
Stone tablets, Tumblr, all the places. Links in the descriptions below. You've heard it all before. You know what's going on. Next episode is, I believe it's Kim. Is it Kim? It's Kim. Kim.
Oh, Kim.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch Kim and discuss it with you, Ethan. I feel like you're gonna have many thoughts about a certain tall Irish doctor.
Well, but anyway, a very opinionated person.
No, you don't say.
I know. I'm as shocked as you are.
Well, on the theme of sleep deprivation, it's 10:19 p.m. and I don't get to go home. I have work to do. So, with that, is there anything you want to add before we close out this episode, Ethan?
Wind farms are evil.
All right, wind farms are evil. And with that, we will talk to you in the next one. Oh, at the very end of the episode, I will say this: there are fun projects in the works. We don't have an exact date for this recording set, but we will say that sometime in the next couple months, probably end of October, we are going to finally be doing MASH the Motion Picture with a very special guest, Mike Jameson. More info on that to come, and sometime in December, I will hint that another super secret movie themed project is in the works. So big is it, in fact, that I am already collecting notes on it because it is going to be something very, very fun, something I'm very passionate about. It will be a bonus episode in addition to the regular MASH episode, so you're not going to be missing a MASH episode for it. But stay tuned for that. And once again, thank you to our 2 newest patrons, Patreons, whatever we call you. Because your support it's going to help make that bonus episode happen. With that being said, we will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.
The time has come for us to say sayonara.